This is a Louie Tee Network exclusive.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie Tee? Welcome. You are in the lab room, of course. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me on the 2016 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names in the 2016 NFL Draft, the talking receivers, and I just had to sneak one more guy in there. This is a guy that I watched the tape and I say to myself, if you could just run faster, you'd be one of the top receivers in this draft. I really love this guy. I love what he brings to the table. A lot of good qualities here. But I don't think he has the one that could put him over the top. But let's talk about him anyway. I'm talking about Oklahoma wide receiver, Sterling Shepard. You look at his pros. This is a guy, to me, with great hands, outstanding hands. To me, him and Josh Doctson may have the best set of mitts in this draft. You're talking about natural hands catchers, guys who don't drop a lot of footballs, who make plays, who will go up, and even though this is a smaller stature receiver, he will go up for the football. Plays a lot bigger. Matter of fact, it's another pro. Plays big. This is not a guy that at 5'10", plays like a 5'10" receiver. He's not your ordinary run-of-the-mill 5'10" receiver. This guy plays a lot bigger than his size. He'll go up, high point the football. It's nothing for him to be a tough guy, go over the middle, make a catch. And that's another pro, so I'm gonna go ahead and list it while we're here. He is a tough football player. There's toughness here. This is a guy that will block. That's another pro. So I'll go ahead and lump it in while we're on the subject matter. He's not afraid to go over the middle, take a shot, hold on to the football, makes catches in traffic. There are a lot of things to like with Sterling Shepard. He'll go up for the football, fight with the defender for it, come down with it. And again, he'll block in the run game. At 5'10", you don't see a lot of 5'10" receivers looking to mix it up, but that's exactly what Sterling Shepard does in many different instances. He'll mix it up with a safety, he'll mix it up with a defensive end if he needs to. He'll mix it up with a cornerback. He is a tough little cookie, and I think that's going to endear him to a lot of teams around the league when looking at his tape and deciding on whether to pull the trigger on a guy like Sterling Shepard. He's a technician. This is one of the biggest pros for Sterling Shepard. To me, if you're looking for a slot receiver, you're looking for a guy to make a difference in the slot, there aren't a lot of great slot receivers in this particular draft. So if you're looking for the best of the best in terms of route running ability and ability to win in one-on-one situations and shake free, get open, catch the football, you're talking about Sterling Shepard. You're talking about a guy that can win in the slot, that can win deep in the slot, that can win underneath in the slot, that can, I think, win outside as well, but doesn't have the speed to threaten the defense necessarily. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But if you're talking about a guy getting in and out of breaks, getting open, this guy's a technician, and to me, he's the best at that in this draft at the receiver position, running routes. This guy is a technician. Rack, yak, you call it what you want. I call it a guy making plays after the catch. Yards after the catch, run after the catch. It's whatever you want to call it. Again, Sterling Shepard is a guy that does that. High football IQ is the next pro. Here's a guy, he's very smart. On the football field, knows how to sit down in zone coverage, knows when to carry out his routes. Another thing is, the thing that really makes me upset with wide receivers when they're blocking is they don't know when to let go. They don't know when to not block a guy in the back. Same thing on special teams. It drives me nuts. If you're behind a guy and you can't make the block, let it go. Let it go. What's worse? You picking up a 10-yard penalty because you missed your assignment and tried to get back into play, or you just saying, hell, he just got tackled, it was my fault, okay, let's go. Don't block a guy in the back. Don't hold a guy if he's already past you and he's about to get to the ball carrier. It's not worth it. If the running back picked up 8 yards in the play, you just got 8 yards. Let it go. If you hold a guy on an 8-yard carry, guess what? The ball's going back. So what's the purpose? Okay, so I love his football IQ. He's a guy that has high football acumen. You see it on the field. And I think that's something else that I love about Sterling Shepard as well. High production at OU. I mean, you look at some of these games that he put forth. I mean, there were a number of big games. The one that stands out to me is the one against Baylor. You know, national television spot, big game in the Big 12, and he goes off on them. I think he had like 15 catches in that ball game. He was monstrous in that big win over Baylor in Baylor. I thought it was a huge performance by Sterling Shepard to go out there and help his team win. You get special teams value with him as well, a guy that can return punts. And again, don't know if he's as dynamic a punt returner as you would like him to be. He's not Tyler Lockett from last year's draft in the sense of a guy that is explosive, that will come in day one and be a fierce difference maker on special teams. But he is a guy that I think can help you on special teams in that aspect of the game as well. So he plays a number of different roles on the football team, and that versatility is something else that I think is a big coup for a guy like Sterling Shepard. So those are all the pros you get with Sterling Shepard. You know, a number of things that I just think he brings to the table that, you know, sometimes go unsung and unnoticed, but he to me is a football player in every sense of the word, and I love this guy and what he brings to the table. But let's talk about his cons though. He's quicker than fast, and that's a really nice way of saying, in certain instances, you don't necessarily, just because you're slow doesn't mean you have to be quicker than fast, okay? You could be just slow. But in his case, he's quicker than fast. He's a guy that gets in and out of breaks, can win underneath, but he's not a guy that's gonna take the top off the defense. Too many times watching the tape, you would see him catch a pass and then, you know, get behind the defense in terms of being able to split the difference between a couple of defenders and then somebody hawk him from behind. He doesn't have that extra gear to run away from the defense and score. He can get behind the defense, but it's not likely. And so he lacks the speed, I think, to be a true difference maker from a big, explosive playmaking standpoint. But in terms of winning underneath, we know that every great offense has a guy that wins underneath. You look at all the really good offenses in the league, with the exception of probably the Carolina Panthers, and even you could say Greg Olsen, is the guy that wins for them underneath. Every exceptional offense that we have in the National Football League right now has a guy that wins underneath, and normally it's the guy in the slot. And we've seen Edelman make a living out of that. We saw Wes Welker do it for years with the Patriots and even the Broncos. We've seen guys make a living winning in the slot, and I think Sterling Shepard could be another one of those guys that comes into the league and is a winner from the slot, but he's not a guy that's going to hurt you deep. And I think that's why we're not talking about Sterling Shepard. When we start talking about the best receivers in this draft, he gets overlooked because the ceiling with him isn't as high because he's not an explosive football player. And I think it does him a disservice because I think he's a really good football player. And if you're talking about all-around wide receivers, I think he's one of the best in this draft class. But again, not a big guy. He's not 6'3", so he's not flashy. He's not a guy that's gonna beat you on an 80-yard play just like that and it's 7-0. And so again, we love the guys that can run the 4.37, the guy that can run the 4.42, the guy that can run the 4.47. I don't think Sterling Shepard's that guy. So I'll be interested to see what he runs at the combine, but I think that's part of the reason why we don't talk about him as much, but the guy's a football player. Is he a guy that has a little issue with balance? That's the next con. I look at him and there's times where I'm like, do you need to change your cleats? Is it a little slippery outside? What's the deal? Because he'll come out of a break and then, you know, he'll go to plant and he'll slip. Or he'll go to shake a guy and he'll slip. And I'm like, why are you on the ground again? Why are you slipping? Why are you losing your footing again? And that's something that it perturbed me a little bit with Sterling Shepard. A guy that just seems like he's on the ground a little bit too much for me without being touched. Stop slipping, keep your balance. He would come out of breaks sometimes and he would fall. And a lot of times when you fall coming out of breaks, that means you don't have the right balance and you don't have the right form. You need to keep your head up. You need to keep your shoulders over your feet. Anytime you get overextended over your feet, that's how you fall. So I don't know if it's a technique issue or if it's just, he just is a guy that doesn't have the greatest of balance. I don't know, but he fell a little bit too much for me. Maybe I'm being nitpicky here. I just thought he was on the ground a little bit too much without being touched at times. And the last con, at 5'10", 193, he's probably more of a slot guy than a out wide receiver. And I think because of the lack of speed, I think we're gonna put him in a box because he has all the qualities of Antonio Brown, but he doesn't have the speed of an Antonio Brown. And I think that's the difference right there, is that Antonio Brown is a guy that can threaten you deep. Because of that speed, you gotta give him some space. He wins underneath. If I'm not afraid of your speed, you don't threaten me deep. I can press up on you. I can come up and challenge you because I don't respect you beating me deep. And I think that's why this guy's gonna probably be a slot receiver at the next level. And as you know, we devalue the slot position when it comes to the draft. If he's faster, that means he's a guy that can play any number of positions, X, Y, or Z. That makes him a more viable option in the draft. You tell me he's just a slot receiver, okay, I can wait to get him later on in the draft. That's what the thinking is usually with teams. So we'll see what happens with Sterling Shepard, but at the end of the day, I love this guy and what he brings to the table. We'll see what happens with him. But to me, top-notch football player, not as fast as you would like him to be, great hands, does everything you want a receiver to do, and I think he's gonna help someone right away in the 2016 NFL season. That's Sterling Shepard and his Draft Prospects 101 breakdown. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the lab room. Come back and join me as I continue to break down anything and everything the National Football League. See you next time. We're gonna switch gears. Don't ask me what position we're doing next. I don't know. Stop asking. See you next time.
There's plenty more where that came from. While you're here, subscribe to the channel. If you want more Louie Tee, be sure to follow me on Twitter at InTheLabRoom, or you can like the Facebook page at In The Lab Room. That's In The Lab Room on Facebook and at In The Lab Room on Twitter. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.
Mm-hmm.